Hey everybody, welcome back. This is another Decktech from Lowlife Plays here. This one is one I've been working on for a little bit. Still tweaking, but it's super fun. It's become a little bit of a pet deck of mine at this point. And this is Norin the Wary. So, let's just jump into this because I have been dying. I've been able to test play it a few times at my local game store and it's been so just fun. Just he runs away. So if you don't know, Norin the Wary, he's a 1 red, 2/1 human warrior. And then whenever a player, any player, casts a spell or a creature attacks, you exile Norin, and then you return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So essentially, someone casts something, Norin flips over, he's exiled, he's gone, he ran away. Love the secret lair, or whatever art this is from. Love it, love it, love it, love it. So yeah, he just runs away, he comes back. So our game plan here is to abuse that with lots of cards that count when something enters play, and he's really hard to remove, which is something that's super fun. You know, someone casts a removal on Norin, he just dips out, and it's so good. So let's jump into kind of what we're doing here. So Norin, Soul Ring, this is our ramp plan. We have Soul Ring, Springleaf Drum. So this is really fun because Norin will come in every turn, you know, and then you can tap him for mana, and it has some synergies which we'll get into later. But Springleaf Drum, Arcane Signet, Mind Stone, Liquimetal Torque has some really good synergies with Confusion in the ranks, which we'll talk about when we get to that card. But Cursed Mirror, just really nice, you know, in mono red. Just allows us to copy something, but also allows us to just kind of have some flexibility in terms of what we need at the time, or, you know, it's also just a rock, which is good. Honor-Worn Shaku, really, this can be anything, but I like it for, there's some interesting synergies here, but you can tap Norin and just always have some mana available. Sad Boy. We do have some flickering effects, as many as, you know, we can get in red. And if we can flicker stuff, then Solemn's a great target for that. But he's also just a nice little body and ramp in red, so Sad Boy wins. And then Rose Room Treasurer. This is where we kind of get into seeing some of the synergy pieces. So whenever another creature you control enters, create a treasure. And then if this is the first or second time this ability has resolved this turn, and then otherwise you can pay X. When you do, it deals X damage to any target. So essentially what Rose Room does is every time anybody casts anything, if we have Norin and Rose Room in play, we just exile Norin, end step, he comes back, we make a treasure. So he can ramp us really, really heavily. I haven't really been able to keep this card on board because people see the synergy pretty quickly and they remove him because it's pretty hard to remove Norin, but pretty good. Skull Clamp, we make a lot of tokens, so having nice card draw in red is really good, which kind of kicks us off into our card draw package. So starting us off with the classic Skull Clamp. Tome of Legends, you know, it's a card that you don't really get to use a lot, but in Norin it's so good. Right? It enters with a page counter on it, which is great, but whenever your commander enters the battlefield or attacks, put a page counter on it. So this will have so many page counters on it, it's crazy. Honestly, I mean, I've considered swapping out one of the rocks for something to, maybe something like Patriarch Seal or something, just, you know, or maybe not Patriarch Seal, but something that can untap this could be fun, but it has one, so you can use this on other players' turns, which is pretty nice, just to draw cards. But it's just nice card draw in red. Speaking of card draw in red, Brass's Tunnel Grinder. Ever since this card came out, I've been just jamming it. You know, I really enjoy this card. It has so much synergy, and just, I mean, it can ditch all the bad cards in your hand, then you get to draw one plus all the cards you didn't need, because this deck is pretty low to the ground in terms of a majority of its spells, so we don't need a ton of mana. So if you get into the late game, it's really great there, it's really great early game, and then it can flip if you descend into our little Searing Rift, and then, you know, you can just discover. So it's just got a lot of really good benefit to it. Moving on to Mind's Eye. So Mind's Eye is really, really good for just our card draw because we can pair that with Honor-Worn Shaku. Right, so you can tap and untap legendary permanent you control to untap Honor-Worn Shaku. So essentially, someone casts something, Norin comes in, you'll just have a lot of, he'll be untapped pretty much at the start of everybody's turn, because, you know, unless they didn't cast anything or attack with anything. But yeah, it's so good, because if you just have Mind's Eye out, and Norin is in play, someone casts something on their last turn, so, or you cast something, or you could even attack with Norin on your turn if you needed to, or whatever. On your end step, he'll come into play untapped. Then, your opponent draws, so you can just tap Norin, boom, good to go, and then that counts, tap and untap legendary permanent. So if you did use this on your turn, it's just so much flexibility for you to just be able to pay this 1 for Mind's Eye. Because then when you pay the 1 on your opponent's turn, whatever they cast, Norin's gone, he comes back, and then you can tap him to untap Honor Worn Shaku, repeat the process, he'll come in untapped, tap him, untap this. Really, really fun stuff. You can do a one-of with Springleaf Drum. You can also get the Relic of Legends, I think is what it is, where you can tap a legendary creature for red. I'm just trying to find a spot for that at the moment, but Springleaf Drum is also good for that. Mind's Eye, Memory Jar. So this card is definitely not necessary in Norn, but it is pretty fun, you know, because there's not a lot of card draw options for us, and Memory Jar allows us to scrap our whole hand for a second, and then kind of set everybody else off of their game plan, and then just draw some gas and go for it. So the Memory Jar is just a nice card to have out and play when you need to just kind of ramp out, and maybe you're really trying to dig for one of your pingers, which is one of the main ways that we end up winning the game, is establishing a ping and then just getting Norin going. Outpost Siege. So this is an interesting card. I put it in the card draw section just because that's typically what I use it for more than its other mode. So you can choose cons, and at the beginning of your upkeep, exile a top card of your library, and then until end of turn, you can play that card. That's typically what I choose. But there are other versions of this type of effect, which we'll get to in a sec. But whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, Outpost Siege deals 1 damage to any target. So you can also establish this whenever Norin is going away, and then you can just ping one thing. I just found that when I have a pinger established, I want it to ping everybody, not just one thing. But this can help you, especially if you're going against like tokens or something like that. It can help control something. So it does have its uses, that's for sure. This is a great example of where we get more card draw. Count on Luck. I saw this card in Ether Drift, and I was like, absolutely. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you just exile a top card. You can play it this turn. Really, really good. It's just expanding your hand every turn. If you get 1, 2 of these effects in play, just makes what you're able to do every turn so much better. And then you can combine that with Charred Foyer. So this one is, at the beginning of your upkeep, you can exile a card from the top of your library. You can play it this turn. But then if you can get to the next step, the Warp Space, once each turn, you can just pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast from exile. So we really love this room, but this room is just extra benefit. You know, we don't even really care about Warp Space that much because we don't have a ton of effects that do it. I mean, we have a few, but, you know, 0, I think the most expensive thing we have is, outside of removal, is like 5. So I think we're pretty okay. Big score, flex slot here. I just wanted some more card draw, and I felt it was nice just to be able to pitch something, draw 2 cards, make some treasure, ramp a little bit. A Revelant Gremlin. This card is so good in Norin. It does so much work. The amount of time, I mean, you filter through so much stuff. So, I mean, whenever another creature with power 2 or less enters you control, Norin, you discard, and then if you do, draw a card. It triggers only once each turn, but it should just say with Norin, triggers each turn. So, really, really good. Reckless Handling. This gets us into our tutor package. We have 3. So we're running Reckless Handling just to go get an artifact. Artifacts are pretty important with us. You know, there's a lot of really powerful artifacts that we get to abuse. So Reckless Handling is really nice. And then if it's nice, it's kind of like Gamble, but if they do pick the thing you chose, you can deal 2 damage to everybody if an artifact card was discarded this way. So even if you have other ones and they pitch one, it still could do extra damage. But Imperial Recruiter, I mean, it's Imperial Recruiter, guys. Like, we go fetch something with 2 or less, maybe Magus of the Moon, you know, and shut everybody off who's not mono. Really, really nice. Goblin Matron. We have a lot of goblins. You know, we run a lot of recursion that are goblin-based. We run a lot of token makers that are goblins. We run a pinger that's a goblin. So, excellent card in here just to go get us what we need when we need it. We do run some just like Bernie, Staxy kind of effects. So, Price of Progress. I love running this card whenever I can in a mono-red deck. It just fits so good, right? Price of Progress. It deals 2 damage for each player for each non-basic land he or she controls. I have hit people for a ton with this card, so really, really good. Crawl Space. This is a flexible slot. You know, we do have a lot of tokens in play a lot, so we can always block pretty well. But this is one I might swap out for Relic of Legends, but I haven't really had a chance. I mean, I've only played a few games with Norin that weren't goldfished, and I only drew this card once, so I haven't really had enough time to play test it. But this is definitely the flex slot. Definitely not a flex slot here is Blood Moon. Blood Moon and Magus of the Moon. These cards can just slow our opponents down to a crawl. It can shut people down. I would say for me they're not flexes, but for other people they might be a flex slot, just because, I mean, some playgroups are okay with Blood Moon effects, some playgroups are not. I am always the fan of, like, if you have a super greedy mana base, then this is what you get, you know? Better have some removal or run more basics, right? So Really, really good. And then this, I mean, Magus is fetchable, so super, super powerful kind of cards, and it can just really shut some players out of the game. Trash for treasure, we do run, I mean, our artifacts are very important to us, so being able to get them back is really important. So that's why we're running cards like Trash for Treasure, so you can, you know, sack an artifact, return an artifact, so pretty good. Goblin Welder, one of the most important cards, I would say, just for recursion. You know, choose target artifact a player controls and target artifact card in that player's graveyard, and then you can just swap them. So really, really good. Love Goblin Welder. Super, super nice. And it can have some synergies with some other cards we'll get to here. Goblin Engineer, you know, just kind of same thing. Hits the same, similar box to Goblin Welder. Right, enters the battlefield. You can search your library for an artifact card, put it in your graveyard, then shuffle, and then you can pay a red and tap him, sack an artifact, return an artifact card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Really hits a lot of things we need. Duretti, same kind of stuff here. You know, you can draw cards, which is great, sack an artifact, return an artifact, and then you can get an emblem with whenever an artifact's put into the graveyard from battlefield, return that card to the battlefield at the beginning of next end step. That's not super important. The first two abilities are really why Duretti's in this deck. Abrade, right? Just its removal, flexible, has some synergy with some cards we'll get to in a minute, but really, really nice. I just love Abrade. Combos really well with our Liquid Metal Torque, right? I mean, we're already running Liquid Metal Torque, so we can run removal that's based on artifacts, because we can just turn something, anything, any non-land permanent into an artifact, and then blow it up with Abrade. Chaos Warp, just got to have target permanent removal, right? It's got to have something to get rid of that Glacial Chasm or something. Vandal Blast, wipe out artifacts. We're in red. We're going to run Vandal Blast. Brotherhood's End. I mean, I love big board wipes in red, especially in Norin. It just makes a lot of sense because Norin is a 2/1, and whenever you cast anything, he exiles himself. So you never have to worry about wiping your own Norin out of play. So you can just shut down people with this, destroy all artifacts. I mean, Brotherhood's End is very flexible. Volcanic Fallout. I like this one because it can't be countered, and then it can just deal 2 damage to everything. Pretty nice. Chain Reaction, just scalable card. Blasphemous Act, very classic removal here. Street Spasm can really just deal with a huge board without flying you don't control, so you can just wipe a board here, and you can overload it for pretty cheap, honestly. XX and 2, you can get there pretty quick. And if I were to swap anything out, I would swap out one of these, maybe like Volcanic Fallout or something, with Pyrohemia. I'm just waiting on Pyrohemia to come in the mail. Got lost. So, Pyroblast. We have some protection spells just to stop some people from doing things, you know. Just blue removal, you know, if you need to get rid of that Rhystic Study, or just, you know, they try and counter your Perforos or something. Pyroblast is just nice to have. And I always feel like when you run this type of interaction in red, it's very gotcha. You know, people aren't expecting you to use a card slot for Pyroblast. But when you do, I mean, it's paid off so much. So I really like it. Chef's Kiss. These are very flexible. I would say Chef's Kiss is another flexible cut here if you want to, but I think it's just flavorful and fun, right? You just gain control of a spell that targets only a single permanent or player, copy it, and then reselect targets at random that aren't yours. It's just such wild chaos. I love Chef's Kiss. Untimely Malfunction. So another thing that can destroy an artifact. It can also change a single target spell, or 1 or 2 target creatures can't block this turn. So it really gives you a lot of flexibility. One of the better cards, I think, for the uncommons in Duskmourn. Really nice. This is going to get us into our token makers. So we do a lot of ping damage by creatures entering the battlefield. Urabrask Forge is just an excellent pressure mechanic, right? At the beginning of combat on your turn, it gets a counter, and then you make an X1 Red Phyrexian Horror with Trample and Haste, where X is the number of counters on it. So it comes in, we hopefully have pingers set up so it deals damage, and then it's a big trampling thing that you just have to swing because it dies anyway. Might as well just swing it in everywhere. And for 3 mana, it's just consistent every turn, getting something. Same thing here with Loyal Apprentice. So Loyal Apprentice is interesting with Norin because you just have to make sure that you are casting spells on your second main instead of your first main. Because if you go through, you know, if you go to combat and you've cast anything before, Norin's gone. He's terrified. He's scared of everything. So just be careful of that, but it does make, you know, hasty 1/1 flyers, which is really, really nice for us to have flying blockers. Siege Gang Lieutenant. I mean, I have a lot of Siege Gang stuff in here, and Siege Gang Lieutenant is great. Same thing here on the beginning of combat. If you control your commander, you make 2 1/1 red goblins with haste. You can pay 2, sack them, start dealing damage to any target, so really good here. On that same vein, we have Spawn Gang Commander, where it's just a Siege Gang Eldrazi, right? So it makes 3 0/1 Eldrazi spawns, which can ramp you, which is great. And then you can pay 1 in a colorless and sack them and deal 2 damage to any target. And then we're running classic Siege Gang Commander, fetchable with Goblin Matron, fetchable with our Imperial Recruiter. But when he enters, you make 3 1/1 red goblins, and then you can sack goblins, deal damage to target creature or player. So lots of flexible removal there. And then we get into some of the really fun cards that really spoke to me about building Norin, right? So Genesis Chamber is one of the biggest ones that whenever a non-token creature comes into play for you or for your opponent, if Genesis Chamber is untapped, that creature's controller puts a 1/1 mirror into play. So people are casting creatures, you're giving them out. It's kind of a weird political tool. You know, a lot of people just don't swing at you anymore because you're giving them tokens, and they're like, oh, that's really nice. But in reality, like, you're getting so many more tokens. Because anytime they cast any spell, you know, if they don't cast a creature, they don't get a mirror. If they cast anything, we get a mirror because our boy comes back. And then we make more tokens. It's awesome. It's so good. And I mean, it's one of the artifacts that's important to protect, and we can recur, right? Gimli of the Glittering Caves. Whenever another legendary enters, he gets +1/+1. And then whenever he deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure. So he costs 3, he's really easy to get in, and then every turn, I mean, if each player casts a spell, that's +3 every single go round, and it's nuts. In addition to you, so you could get +4 every single go around with a double striker who makes treasure when he hits. Really a lot of pressure. I like him. Wand of Wonder, just fun, right? I mean, Norin with the Wand of Wonder seems pretty cool. You pay 4, roll a d20. Each opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile instant or sorcery. Shuffle the rest, and you can cast up to X without paying their mana cost. So you could get 1, 2, or 3. So it's really, really fun. It can just provide some really interesting stuff, and it can just help close the gaps with Norin sometimes. Mindclaw Shaman. So this guy is just fun. You know, he enters, target opponent reveals their hand. You can cast an instant or sorcery without paying its mana cost. So this is just kind of a funny card. You know, if you see somebody tutor for something, you could tutor for Mindclaw Shaman, get it, cast their crazy spell that they just got. Maybe you know that they're waiting to cast some sort of nutso card, and then you're like, well, I want to cast it. Or maybe someone's like, well, I have removal, and they keep threatening it, and then you just take it from them and use it on their own thing. It's pretty fun, you know. For 5 mana, definitely a flex slot, but really fun for me. Confusion in the ranks, not a flex slot, but it will lose you friends, definitely. So you got to be careful, you know, if you are going to run Confusion in the ranks, just, you know, maybe talk about it with your playgroup first. People don't like stealing stuff, but honestly, I mean, I think it's fine. It's fair game. And in Norin, it gets wild. So Confusion in the ranks, whenever an artifact, creature, or enchantment comes into play, its controller chooses target permanent another player controls that shares a type with it, exchange control of those permanents. It is not a May, so you have to do it. It's for everybody. And for us, it's just crazy, because Norin comes in, we swap Norin. Someone casts anything, Norin exiles, Norin comes back, we give Norin away again. And then we're just, I mean, it makes it really hard for people to keep creatures in play, at least their key ones, because we'll just take all of them. And then this combos so well with cards like Liquid Metal Torque. So we can turn one of their permanents into an artifact, and then when we play one of our artifacts that we don't care about, like maybe we have a Springleaf Drum in the late game, and we just cast that down, we can then swap it with something that they really like, or take an enchantment of theirs, or take something of theirs. It's really, really fun. And in Confusion in the Ranks, it doesn't matter who owns it. So you can even give this, you know, people can take it, because it's not a May, so they could try and cast an enchantment, and then boom. You have it. It's really, really fun. Panharmonicon, very powerful in Norin. Just all the stuff we've been talking about, imagine if you did it twice. Right, that's what it's all about. Conjurer's Closet. How are we going to flicker in red, you ask? Conjurer's Closet. That works. So yeah, there's a lot of value in doubling up on some of our ETBs, or just being able to ping more times. So really, really good. The bread and butter of how we win. Impact Tremors. Right? Just thing comes in, thing beats face. That's Impact Tremors. Same thing with Agate Instigator, but it's really good in the early game for 2 mana. It's a 1/3 nice blocker, or for 4 mana you can have 2 of it, which is just so good. Molten Gatekeeper, same stuff. Has Unearth, which is nice. You know, if you have a turn where maybe late game it's died and you're gonna cast a bunch of stuff, for 1 red mana, you can just bring it back and then ping a bunch of stuff down. It's pretty fun. Witty Roastmaster, this guy has done so much damage for me. I mean, it's wild. With 1 pinger, Norin can just do so much damage. It's pretty wild. This guy, he's one of our best ones. So he's fetchable. I mean, all of them are pretty fetchable with Imperial Recruiter. Not all of them, but most of them. But this guy, Goblin Matron, can get him. Imperial Recruiter can get him. Whenever one or more goblins you control attack, you make more goblins, which make more ETB triggers, which ping more things. He's just so good. So good. Purphoros, one of the most classic ones, right? I mean, he's just, if you're doing ETB shenanigans and you have red, might as well throw Purphoros in there, and he just hits so hard. Same thing with Oger Axonil. So this guy, he really turns our pings into really scary damage, right? I mean, then anytime anyone casts anything, Norin comes in, you have one pinger out, 4 damage. Like, just nuts. So he's very scary, and he's hard to remove because he just flips over. Terror of the Peaks, definitely another one of our really powerful pingers. You know, he protects himself just by having them pay 3 life. And then Norin's doing 2 every single time anybody casts anything. You can start pinging down problematic removal cards, so that's really nice too. And then Warstorm Surge. It's pretty much just like a Terror in the Peaks, right? Terror of the Peaks. Whenever a creature enters, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature or player. Pretty similar. Then we get to our lands. Let's get to our lands. So we're running Pinnacle Monk and Sundering Eruption as our 2 MDFCs. So I mean, this one's just super nice. You know, when you need it, it can just help you get an instant or sorcery back from your graveyard to your hands. Maybe get a removal, get a tutor, I don't know, whatever you need. Sundering Eruption, destroy target land. So having some more land removal is really excellent just because there are some really annoying lands. And, you know, land is too protected in Commander, and people abuse it, right? So let's just take care of it. That's why we're running Blood Moon and other crap like that. We're running Buried Ruin. Just having artifact recursion on a land is pretty nice for us because a lot of our artifacts are super good, and people will remove them. Genesis Chamber gets removed. Wand of Wonder is annoying and it gets removed. Panharmonicon just skyrockets your gameplay into something crazy, so they definitely try and take that out. So being able to get it back is nice. Dust Bowl, more land hate. Get rid of it. We sack a land, destroy target non-basic land. Doesn't even come into play tapped. Keep. Crazy card when we combo this with our Confusion in the Ranks, right? For 2 mana, we make a 0/1, and then we swap it with one of their creatures. Crazy stuff. Love Keep. Really strong. Valakut, Molten Pinnacle. We're mono red. We're damage. I mean, this is just a great card, right? It just pings things down. And without the land hate, it's really hard for people to remove it. Sokazan. So this is just here for, you know, it's just a nice land. You can get some stuff. It can turn into some creatures with haste. It can, you know, do some pinger stuff. It comes in untapped. It's just nice. Darksteel Citadel and Great Furnace. We're running these specifically for their interaction with Confusion in the Ranks. Nothing feels better than when you're like, okay, I'm going to play, you know, Darksteel Citadel and swap it for their Soul Ring or swap it for their crazy artifact card or whatever. So that's really the big reason that we're running those. And then the rest are just mountains. I really like this art, but I don't have enough of it, so I'm also using some of these. But that will wrap it up here for Norin the Wary. It's still a deck that I am tinkering with. I keep the Moxfield link pretty up to date on, you know, what I'm doing with it, and it's fun. I have a really good time. It does a ton of damage, and people never expect Norin to just come out swinging like he does. And it's just been a blast to put this deck together and have fun with mono red. So if you like this, you know, drop a like, comment, subscribe if you like me that much. But outside of that, I will see you guys in the next one. Bye!